Well, for me, I actually heard about the study right before I got pregnant with my second daughter. And I thought it was such a great idea. I really was excited about it. So pretty much the second call I made when I found out I was pregnant was to APrON to sign us up. So she was in very early. And I have a real feeling of pride being involved in the study. I love that we're studying such a big group of moms and kids and really seeing how different things in our lives change some of our outcomes or potentially influence our outcomes.
I just kind of find it fun.
And in which ways do you find it fun?
Just coming in and doing all the puzzles and doing the games.
I find the newsletters are very informative, and it's good to see what's being done with the research information. There are benefits to having access to several professionals assessing you and your child along the way to obtain specific reports. We personally benefited from this with my child having access to supports in preschool with the neurocognitive assessment at age of 3. The little gifts that were given to the children at the visits were enjoyed very much by my son and much appreciated from a parent perspective as well.
I think participating in the APrON study, it's been really great. I think just being pregnant, it had a lot of benefits, just gets you thinking more about nutrition and supplements and, you know, things that you're doing while you're carrying the child. And I really like, since I've had my son, that having us be followed kind of all the way through has been really great. I also think it's been very interesting just filling out the questionnaires for my son as he's grown up. It kind of gives you just a different way of looking at kind of how he's developing physically and emotionally, mentally, and where, you know, some skills he may be a little bit weaker, or where you can tell that he is excelling. I also really am happy to be able to help out with the data collection. It makes the study much more comprehensive, and I think that's really kind of a neat thing to be a part of kind of right now and in the long run. And as an added benefit too, I think that my son has really enjoyed it. He's now 9, and he has done a few kind of preliminary studies. He just filled out his own questionnaire this year, and he really loved it. And I think giving him that opportunity to do it has been really great. It gives him a sense of autonomy and shows him that, you know, he's part of something bigger as well, which I think is really, really great. And I really think it's a good thing. The longer the study can go on, the more correlations can be made. And I really think that could benefit so many people.
So I would say that the most tangible benefit that I can think of for participating was actually the assessment, the full child development assessment that my daughter had at 3 years old. I found that to be something that was quite interesting and valuable. But in all honesty, why I see that was a benefit is that my daughter still talks about it. She still talks about the rainbow building that she went to. She still talks about the nice people who were in the room. She talks about some of the assessments that she went through in her mind, that they were games. And so I thought that was really interesting, where I felt that it was a benefit as a parent to not only receive the information, but there was something for her that really connected her to the study as well too. And we talk about it. We talk about her being part of a larger study, as part of a cohort. And she remembers it as, well, remember when I went to that rainbow building. So it's interesting for me, where I feel like it was a tangible benefit for what I received, but also a way to connect my daughter to what she's actually part of. So that's probably the thing that stands out the most. You know, the less things I would say that the ongoing engagement with the research group, so whether that's through the newsletter that's sent out, I feel like that's a benefit. Finding out the research that has gone on, you know, where the data has been used, I feel like that's a benefit. And quite honestly, too, being part of the advisory group, I see that we have access to different information, or information is shared with us, as I also see that as having been a benefit to participating.
The APrON study interests me right from the very start. I actually saw an ad in Starbucks, and then I signed up for it when I was pregnant. What motivated me is that I could help and make a difference for others if I participated in this research. I have an interest in nutrition and science. This continues to motivate me to see the results of the study. The evaluation sheets help me recognize a developmental concern, as I kind of mentioned in the last question we had for our child, and getting the supports he needs. This may have helped obtaining these supports sooner rather than later. We saw the benefits of having evaluations done as our child grows, and so with these evaluations being done or the research that's being presented, I'm learning a lot and utilizing the information that comes back from these. So that's what's keeping me motivated to continue with the study. I'm really interested to kind of see the results of, in the end, in a longer term study.
I think the biggest challenge I would say I faced is really my own time management to complete the questionnaire. So I see that the length of the questionnaire, you know, setting aside 60 to 90 minutes to do it in one sitting, I find that's probably the largest challenge. So I could blame it on the questionnaire that it's lengthy, and I think it is lengthy for the reasons and the information is gathered. But the biggest challenge is making that time, finding specific time where I can sit down and do it has probably been the biggest challenge I face.
I think the main challenge is life and time. I mean, like I said, I love participating, but I have absolutely forgotten questionnaires that have come in the mail or an email. And it's just that we have so many things going on in our world and so many things coming at us, especially as the kids get older. We have school emails, activities. And so it's more just time and forgetting to send things back, which I feel terrible about when I do.
I think the strategies are some things that are already happening. So I would suggest that the emails, I mean, when I haven't done the questionnaire, I will get a very, pleasant, friendly email reminding me, nudging me along that my questionnaire hasn't been completed. So I think those regular reminders are helpful. I've also appreciated, since the inception of the study, also there was the paper version, and then there's also moved to an online version. And so I appreciate actually that both versions have been available. So based on, sometimes I can carve out a certain amount of time that I can use the paper version because it's very visual to me to remind myself to do it. And then other times the online version has been really helpful. So over the years, depending on the circumstance, I would say that the APrON team has made it easier by both the gentle, friendly reminders, but also making the platform available in order to be able to answer, quite accessible. Based on the current challenge, I would be, the excuse I'm using with myself at the time of why I might not be doing it, but actually making it quite easy.
Yeah, absolutely. The free parking is always appreciated. The patience from everybody. When I do forget, I get reminders, which is wonderful. There was one set of papers I found, 2 months after I was supposed to send them in, and they were missing some, and everybody just was great. They sent me a new copy. I got it in. Really the communication is excellent, and everybody's been really, really patient and supportive.
Everybody's really nice.
I believe we've all had lots of practice now, online platforms such as Zoom. I find that if you can, for any meetings or where you're not actually taking measurements and types like that, but even some of the nutrition meetings, if you can have them attend the meetings from home, it just makes it easier to fit in your schedule overall. I live outside of Calgary, so for me coming into doing some of the things at the Children's Hospital, I did have to do some traveling. So if you can eliminate that from a busy parent schedule, I think that would be the number one thing that I particularly like is as much online feedback. It would be the best.
It's a small strategy, but that's more that I would suggest is having a timeline associated with the strategy. With the questionnaire, when I went back and I looked through the email, when the email comes, it suggests through the link to fill out the questionnaire, but it doesn't give a time frame. And I feel that, and then eventually an email will come at at a different time reminding me to do it. And I thought it may be helpful in the body of that email to suggest to the participant to fill this out within a certain time frame. So, we'd appreciate your response to come back in the next, 2 to 3 weeks, because I recognize there's data collection time points that are probably pivotal to how you're analyzing, and knowing that time frame might be really helpful. So if I do have 6 weeks to complete the study or complete the questionnaire, then I think that would be really helpful. And also that sort of dovetails on the next nudge that probably comes in an email. I sort of see it as when I get that email again, it reminds me again, rather than, putting the urgency on myself going, I know I have 2 weeks, I have to figure out in my calendar where I'm going to do that. So I think that was just something very simple about suggesting to a participant the timeline that would be suggested in order to be able to get this done may be helpful for someone like me who doesn't prioritize it unless I see that there's a timeline involved with it.
For me, what works best are text reminders. And I don't think that you do that yet. But I tend to, even if it's in my calendar, if I snooze it for a little bit, it's kind of out of my head and gone. But if I get a text reminder, even a little bit before something is due, or just something that's kind of in my face and I can't forget about it because it's not on my PC, it's not at work, it's not somewhere else. That's what I respond well to. I don't know that everybody else would. And then the other idea I had was, sorry, one sec here. Instead of doing some of those bigger panels where we used to come in and we would meet for an hour or however long it was, something like this, which we're doing out of necessity, or even just, 10, 15-minute Zoom meetings with several of us. I know that's really hard to coordinate. I remember when we did the little picking out the time slots and nobody seemed to kind of match up with what we could do on what day, but those are the only ones that I could think of that would kind of work for me.
What would I like to see APrON take on next? There's so much I'm curious about. For example, how is puberty affecting the APrON kids? How is their mental health? How much time are they spending outdoors? How much time are they spending on screens? And what is their added sugar consumption at this age? I suspect, though, that these areas I just listed are already areas that APrON is planning to study. So let me tell you a bit more about 2 areas that may not be on your radar right now. One area I wonder about as a parent is around the long-term effects of sleep training. So to give you some personal context about where I'm coming from, I sleep trained all 3 of my kids using a classic old-fashioned cold turkey cried out method. My first child at 2 months, the second at 6 months, and the third again at 2 months of age. Now I'm aware that in certain circles, the consensus is that only a heartless pariah would choose to maximize everyone's sleep through a cried out method, but all 3 of my kids seem fine. They don't exhibit any signs of an underlying mental health illness. They also don't exhibit any signs of a mental health injury caused by external environmental factors. They all seem like typically developing kids. And my suspicion is that I'm not the only parent who hasn't seen permanent harm arise from sleep training. And yet, from my understanding, the jury is still out about the safety of sleep training from a clinical standpoint, because neither the Canadian Pediatric Society nor the American Academy of Pediatrics have issued a position statement on sleep training, as far as I know, nor do they recommend a specific age to do it. There is also no data on what proportion of Canadian parents sleep train, even though it's a common topic that comes up from exhausted parents. As a result, cried out sleep training has turned into a somewhat secret underground activity. As a parent panelist, here's how I've been seeing it from the trenches. Many parents do it, but few are willing to admit it for fear of social opprobrium. Given how much of an enduring debate this is for exhausted parents, I'm surprised that we still don't know definitively whether sleep training is a perfectly safe option for those parents who choose to do it, or whether it is perilously risky and is ill-advised for everyone. Is it okay or is it unacceptable? We don't know. Critics of cried out methods will often point to a 2011 early human development study that noted elevated cortisol or stress hormones for some period after sleep training has been successfully completed. Whenever there's a debate about the safety of sleep training,
critics hold up this article as the mic drop study. Boom, there you go. Sleep training is dangerous. But my gut feeling is that it isn't dangerous, and I would love for APrON to weigh in on the debate with some data. So here are some of the questions that I think would be interesting to study on this particular topic. Looking back, how many parents in the APrON study sleep trained and how many did not? And trust me, people would remember. Do parents remember how old their babies were when they sleep trained? Of those parents who sleep trained their babies, did they use a cold turkey cried out method, a gradual method, or a check and console cried out method, or some other broadly categorized version of sleep training? At age 10, what are the cortisol levels of the children who were sleep trained versus the children who were not sleep trained? At age 10, is there a difference in exhibiting signs of either an underlying mental health illness or an externally caused mental health injury in the kids who are sleep trained? In other words, is there any noticeable long-term effect from sleep training? There is a lot of fear-mongering out there, yet I wonder how much of that fear-mongering is based on science that holds up under deeper scrutiny. Perhaps one day, research from the APrON study could even lead to an actual position statement from the Canadian Pediatric Society on sleep training. This would be immensely helpful for exhausted parents. As a parent, I also have a second idea about what APrON could take on next. The second issue I wonder about is the unsupervised roaming distance that APrON kids have at age 10. To give you some personal context, my family lives in Marteloup in Calgary, and this past summer, my 9-year-old son, Robbie, was allowed to roam with his friends as far as the bike pump park on the south side of the Glenmore Reservoir, which is about 10 kilometers away. There was a time when this sort of roaming distance for a 9-year-old was the norm, but now it's becoming exceptional, and I'd like to learn more about this trend. Here are some of the questions that I think would be interesting to study on this particular topic. How far are APrON kids allowed to roam from their homes at age 10? At age 10, what proportion of APrON kids walk, bike, or bus to school on their own, at least some of the time? And what proportion are always accompanied by a parent or guardian on their travels? How old was your APrON kid when he or she was first allowed to go to the nearest playground on his or her own? How often do other kids in the neighborhood knock on your door and ask your 10-year-old APrON kid to come out and play? How often does your APrON kid knock on someone else's door to ask them to come out to play? How old was your APrON kid when you started leaving him or her home alone? For how long? Is there a correlation between permitted roaming distance and any other health outcomes being studied through the APrON questionnaires? Is there a correlation with responses about resiliency, ability to handle adverse situations, self-esteem, confidence, a sense of responsibility? And how did the COVID summer impact permitted roaming distance for your child? I have a vested interest in this particular topic because when I send my 3 kids out there to play, there's safety in numbers. My kids are safer out there when other people's children are out there too. Yet as far as I know, neither the Canadian Pediatric Society nor the American Academy of Pediatrics have issued a position statement that gives guidance or encouragement to parents around what age kids can play outside unsupervised. Again, perhaps one day research from the APrON study could lead to an actual position statement from the Canadian Pediatric Society on unsupervised outdoor play. This would be immensely helpful for kids and parents.
To me, the most interesting things that have come out of this have been kind of some of the more social determinants of health type findings. So initially when I enrolled, it was kind of marketed as a pregnancy and nutrition study, but I think over time it's been neat to see them look at things like the 2013 flood and its impact on families. And it would be great, I think, to see more of the sort of social determinants stuff, because I think that has a huge impact on child development, and it's really not widely recognized so much yet. Like, everybody knows that nutrition is important, right?
You know, some of these have already kind of been touched on. I'm really interested in kind of alternative healing options. So organic versus conventional food. And not that I eat 100% organic, but I'm curious on if there's an impact with that. And then vaccinations versus non-vaccination, people who use homeopathy or natural supplements versus conventional medicine. I'm really interested in that side of things, and I know there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes of where you can and can't study certain things, but I find that stuff really interesting. I know there's a lot of focus right now on the kids' screen time because that's definitely having an impact, in my opinion. But that side of thing, what they're ingesting and what's going in their bodies, I'm always interested in.
What do I think of APrON trying to transition to an intergenerational cohort, which would follow my son Robbie and other kids up until they become adults, and then follow their children, my grandchildren? My answer to this first question is that I think it's an excellent idea because I'm curious about the truly long-term health impacts of various early childhood experiences. And of course, as researchers, you're all familiar with the Tomorrow Project, which started in 2000, around the same time as the APrON study. It's the largest research study undertaken in Alberta, and it has enrolled about 50,000 Alberta men and women aged 35 to 69 to track their health over several decades. One thought I have is that there might be some good information to glean if the Tomorrow Project and the APrON study were to join forces and add the APrON group as a younger continuing cohort for the Tomorrow Project.
I think that it would be very interesting. I mean, obviously, you're going to lose some people as you go along, and I can't really consent on behalf of my children and grandchildren, but I think in general it's a really great idea. If you had enough people consent to that, that would be an amazing cohort of people to study over time.
I think it would be just such a great idea. I mean, like I kind of said before, to have it go longer and longer, it just gives so much more comprehensive data. I think it would just be amazing to be able to have that, you know, correlations between mothers and their children and possibly their own children. Again, it'll be more kind of accurate almost in some ways, just because you would have more data to draw upon. And I also think it would be very interesting because I had a son, so they followed me while I was pregnant and then had him. So it would be very interesting to see if he, you know, continues with the study and then he has a child. It would kind of have a different slant for him because his wife or girlfriend or whoever would be carrying the baby. And then, you know, it would be following their child at that point too. So it might be kind of interesting just to see how that would work because it started with me as the mother, but then it would move to the son and then possibly to his wife. And then to their child at that point. So it would be definitely very interesting. And I think it would also be interesting just to see, you know, where we are in 20, 30, 40 years, just in the world and lifestyles and all those things and how that might play an impact in that new generation coming around as well. And to see kind of what correlations from the study taking place, like when I did it in 2011 versus, let's say, 2030, 2035.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think it's a really interesting idea. I think it would also yield information that would be very helpful to understand how different, you know, generations of health experience things differently. So I actually think it's a great idea. I mean, part of getting my daughter involved in it early, but also talking to her a lot about it. It's not something that's happening just with me, that it's happening with her. I'm hoping that she'll also feel just as compelled to be a part of contributing to the overall data collection, but also the understanding of you know, really science going forward, that she can be a part of it going on into the future. So I actually love it, quite honestly. I think it's a really neat idea.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great idea. I really do. I mean, of course, I can't speak for my daughter once she's an adult. It's completely up, well, right now it's up to her whether she participates or not. But I think if you have willing participants, I think the value of that information and the value that we could gain from studying people, our families over multi-generations is amazing. I think it would be just absolutely an exceptional idea.
I like the idea of them studying me in the future. I kind of want to see how how I'll change.
I guess I would just say that I think it's been interesting as my son has gotten older, he's 10 now, that he has been able to participate in some of these follow-up studies and sort of get an idea of what research is about. And so, I mean, from that perspective, I think that he would be game to keep participating for sure.
Honestly, I've been really happy with the study so far. I think that it's been really neat kind of being able to be a part of something kind of bigger like this. And like I said earlier, I really like that my son can be involved now. He really enjoys it. He thinks it's really neat. And so I think that, you know, as long as we can do this study, we will both participate if we can, just because I think it's really good for him to have that autonomy and to be part of something bigger. And, you know, for him and I kind of have that one thing that we do together that we can discuss, you know, as we get older as well.
It's just a word of thanks, I guess. I mean, it's been a really fun thing to be a part of since the inception. I found that, you know, when I do the questionnaires, I become very reflective on things I hadn't really thought about. And so things around milestones that my daughter may have been hitting, things as a parent I wouldn't have given a whole lot of thought to. So I appreciate that there's sort of a continuity in my reflection as a parent as well too. That's been ongoing for the study as well. So I just want to, you know, say good luck and congratulations to the team as you've moved forward through it. It's been a really fun experience to be a part of that hasn't been labor intensive. In any shape or form. It's just something I find has been informative, but also nice to be part of a community that's trying to build this type of data for future generations as well too. So thank you, it's been very helpful.
Congratulations to all of the APrON researchers on 10 years of the APrON study. And thank you too, dear listeners, for tuning into this session and for giving parent participants like me with a chance to weigh in on the future of this study.
We're always super grateful when we get the call that there's been another year of funding, and I really hope that people who are providing the funding understand the impact and how beneficial what APrON is looking at is for all of us as a community.
Okay. So I think that's all.